Within the very heart of New York City, where the rhythm of life never ceases to beat, there was a dark enigma that lingered in the shadows. The mystery in question was one that had been lingering for a considerable amount of time. It was an unexpected phone call that broke the silence and reignited the embers of the inquiry, which ultimately led to the probe being rekindled and the investigation being reopened anew. This investigation has been going on for a lengthy amount of time without any progress being made toward a conclusion. When Deborah Holmes called the York Police Department, she breathed new life into a case that had been dormant for an inexcusably lengthy amount of time. There had been an inexcusable amount of time that had passed since the incident had begun. The veil of complacency that had been surrounding the probe was removed by her. The investigation had been surrounded by it the entire time. It was as if she had broken through the cloak of complacency. Although her call would set in motion a chain of events that would eventually reveal the truth about the strange circumstances surrounding Shelly Dana's murder, no one was truly aware of what was going to take place. This was despite the fact that her call would actually set in action the chain of events. Everything that was known was that the truth would be revealed at some point in the future. This was the only thing that was known. Upon receiving the gift of life, Shelly Dana was welcomed into the heart of an Orthodox Jewish community that was tucked away among the bustling streets of Manhattan. This community was located in the heart of Manhattan. Over the course of her childhood, she resided in this particular area. Her formative years were spent entrenched in tradition and familial bonds, both of which contributed to the building of her characteristics. She spent her formative years in the United States. These two elements contributed to the formation of her characteristics, which she inherited from them. As a result of the events that transpired in her life, she developed into a woman who is resilient and persistent. Taking into account the challenges that Shelly faced when she was younger, it is surprising that she was able to attain such remarkable achievement in her professional life while she was still in her youthful years. Maintaining an unrelenting passion to her job and possessing a sharp mind allowed her to carve out a path to success in the field of asset management. She was able to achieve this achievement by maintaining a sharp mind. The accomplishment was one that she was able to accomplish. During that period of time, she was able to earn the attention and praise of her colleagues in the industry due to the fact that she was able to successfully manage portfolios that were worth a significant amount of money. When Shelly was in the midst of accomplishing great things in her professional life, she found love in the arms of Rod Coughlin, a fellow professional with whom she shared a profound connection. Shelly was in the midst of achieving great things in her professional life. At this point in time, Shelly was on the verge of realizing her full potential. Shelly was going through a stage in her work life in which she was having a great deal of success just at that moment. Almost immediately after they tied the knot, they put together a family that turned out to be picture perfect, ending in the birth of two beautiful children. In the midst of the unpredictability that is unavoidable in life, the fact that their love remained consistent in spite of the challenges that they faced while they were together acts as a guiding beacon of optimism. This is because their love stood the test of time. Shelly Dana, on the other hand, was on the verge of being confronted with a circumstance that would ultimately unfold in a manner that would be completely terrible. A dreadful occurrence took place exactly about the time when the new year was due to begin, and it was a sad one. Unfortunately, this occurred. Shelly's life was taken away from her in a manner that was quick and unexpected. It caused shock waves to ripple throughout the community, and it was a manner that caused shock waves to ripple throughout the area. This was a fact that utterly caught everyone off guard and took them by surprise. They were left with a void that would continue to exist for many years to come as a result of her untimely demise, which cast a shadow over them. This void persisted for a considerable amount of time. It was inevitable that this vacuum would continue to cast a shadow over them. Those persons who were acquainted with her and loved her were left with a void that would continue to exist in their lives. As the investigation into Shelley Dana's death developed, it would unearth a complicated web of lies and secrets, casting light on the most terrible parts of human nature throughout the course of the investigation. Shelley Dana's death was the subject of the investigation. Even with everything that had happened, there was a spark of hope that was spreading throughout the midst of the pervasive darkness. This was despite the fact that everything had taken place. There was every cause to have hope that justice would prevail and that the truth would, at long last, be brought to light. There was every reason to have enthusiasm. Such optimism was not unwarranted. The horrifying discovery of Shelley Dana's lifeless body marked the beginning of the unraveling of the horrific events that had been around her. This was the beginning of the unraveling of the lifeless body. It turned out that the discovery that was made was horrifying. In 2014, the New York Police Department received a terrifying call that told them of the horrible circumstances that were waiting for them. This call came on a day that would go down in history as a significant event. One of the people that was waiting for them was the one who called them. We received this call on a day that would go down in history as one of the most important days in the history of the world. The presence of Shelley in the bathtub, where she was submerged in water that was polluted with blood, threw a dreadful shade over what was supposed to be a magnificent day of celebration. Shelley's presence in the bathtub cast a devastating shadow. In the water, Shelley was completely submerged. Shelley was fully submerged in the water when she was there. Immediately following the finding, the authorities were ready to explain that Shelley's death was the result of a horrific accident that they had discovered during their investigation. This argument was planned to be made in the immediate aftermath of the discovery. After conducting the inquiry, the detectives came to the realization that her death was the result of an accident that took place when she was submerged in the bathtub. Due to the fact that the circumstances seemed to be consistent with a freak accident, this conclusion was reached as a result of the circumstances. This preliminary evaluation, on the other hand, would soon be put into doubt as a result of the events that were taking place during the time period that was being called into question. A religious organization's intervention to clean up the murder scene was an unexpected turn of events that occurred in the midst of the turmoil and the anguish that was taking place. This caused the situation to become more chaotic than it had been before. In the course of events, this was a change that took place. Because of this intervention, it was able to take place. The organization performed a cleaning ritual on the residents in order to fulfill the requirements of the ritual and fulfill its requirements perfectly. In accordance with the custom of the Orthodox Jewish community, this was carried out. In order to shed light on the circumstances surrounding Shelley's death, this cleaning exercise was carried out with the purpose of deleting key evidence that could have shed light on those circumstances. This eradication was carried out with the intention of removing the evidence. It was going to be revealed that this act would be a defining event in the course of the investigation, which would lead to investigations into the specific circumstances that led to her passing death. This was going to be the case. A second unexpected turn of events occurred when Shelley's family made the difficult decision to forego an autopsy in order to adhere to the religious rituals that were in place at the time. This brought about a second unexpected turn of circumstances. The wishes of the person who has passed away were taken into consideration when making this decision in order to show respect for themselves. The decision that was made would have far-reaching effects since it would prohibit investigators from acquiring crucial insights into the circumstances surrounding Shelley's death and would hinder their efforts to expose the truth. In addition, it would prevent them from revealing the truth. The investigation's primary focus was on Shelley's death, which was the subject of the probe. When the official investigation came to a halt, a private investigator was hired to conduct a more in-depth investigation into Shelley Dana's life. The purpose of this investigation was to gain a better understanding of the complexities that are involved in her life. In order to learn more about the conditions that surrounded her life, this was done in order to unearth more pertinent facts. When Shelley and Rod Coughlin were going through a lot of issues in their marriage, It started out as a search for solutions, but it rapidly grew into a complex web of dispute between them. Shelley and Rod Coughlin were going through a lot of challenges. When Shelley and Rod Coughlin were married, they were experiencing a great deal of difficulty in their relationship. As a consequence of the study, an uncomfortable image of their relationship was formed. The analysis revealed that there were underlying tensions and arguments that had not been resolved. This revealed that there were difficulties in their relationship. The information was uncovered by the investigator who was working on the case. Rod Coughlin was identified as a probable suspect in the premature death of Shelley as a consequence of the extra information that was obtained, which led to the identification of Rod Coughlin as a possible suspect. Shelley's death occurred at an earlier age than expected. In light of this, Rod Coughlin was elevated to the status of a probable suspect in the investigation. An increasing collection of evidence pointed to his questionable behavior, which, in conjunction with the stormy nature of his relationship with Shelley, cast a shadow of doubt over his innocence. This may be attributed to the fact that his relationship with Shelley was turbulent. As a direct result of this, concerns were raised regarding his innocence. It was stunning revelations that came as the private investigator continued to delve deeper into the investigation. These revelations contradicted the original results, which indicated that the death was the result of an accident. The assumption that the death was the consequence of an accident was disproved by the evidence presented here. The account of a horrible accident started to be called into doubt as a result of the revelation of several hints and contradictions that pointed towards a more sinister truth that had been kept beneath the surface. This occurred as a result of the fact that the reality was hidden beneath the layers of appearance. A dramatic unraveling of the mysteries surrounding Shelley Dana's death would be made possible as a result of the engagement of the private investigator, which would prove to be a defining event in the investigation. This would be the case because the private investigator would be hired. Under these circumstances, the investigation would undergo a substantial development. Due to the fact that this is the only way to attain this objective, this would be accomplished by seeking justice with unwavering determination. Exhumation of Shelley Dana's remains and subsequent autopsy done on them were the events that proved to be the catalysts for the breakthrough that occurred over the course of the inquiry into the circumstances surrounding her death. This breakthrough occurred as a result of the investigation into the circumstances surrounding Shelley Dana's death. Professionals in the field of forensic science were able to uncover the secrets that were contained within Shelley's remains by utilizing an exceptional level of precision in their investigation. They were able to dismantle the illusion that the death was the result of an accident and uncover the reality of the dreadful scenario as a result of the findings of their research, which revealed the horrifying reality of a murder that was committed on purpose. The official cause of death for Shelley was altered from an accident to criminal behavior in order to reflect the circumstances surrounding her death. This was done since the police were in possession of evidence that could not be questioned. As a result, it was essential for the authorities to make a change to the official cause of death that had been established. It was as a result of the disclosure that shockwaves spread across the community, which resulted in the creation of a newly discovered feeling of urgency in the pursuit of justice. In light of the fact that the revelation prompted shockwaves to form, this occurred as a consequence of the fact that, after taking into mind the fact that the official cause of death had been determined, the New York Police Department did not waste any time in moving forward with their investigation. They didn't waste even a single second of their time. In order to bring the person who was responsible for Shelley's murder to justice, the detectives embarked on a tenacious mission to learn the truth. They were armed with new clues and a renewed passion for the investigation by the time they reached this point. Making sure that the individual who was responsible for Shelley's killing was brought to justice was their ultimate destination. At the same time that rumors began to circulate about Shelley's husband, Rod Coughlin, saying that he was the one responsible for her death, the authorities began to investigate his actions and behavior in the final minutes of her life because they believed that he was the one responsible for her passing. Both of these events occurred simultaneously. A terrible picture depicting a man who was consumed by money and rage was the culmination of a pattern of lying and manipulation that began to develop over the course of time and eventually led to the painting. It was a dreadful portrayal of their personality that this portrait represented. The identification of Rod's financial motivations for Shelley's death was one of the most essential sections of the inquiry that was carried out. This was one of the most important components of the investigation. As a result of the unexpected death of Rod's wife, he was in a position to collect a considerable amount of money due to the fact that there were millions of dollars at stake. This was possible because of the fact that there was a risk of losing millions of dollars. The temptation of wealth and power, which turned out to be a potent catalyst, was a powerful push for his barbaric crimes, which ended up being a terrible consequence. His actions were a direct result of this powerful push. The outcomes of his acts were a direct consequence of this terrible consequence. Another component that added to the complexity of the issue was Rod's relationship with Deborah Holmes, a woman whose presence in his life caused problems that were cause for concern. This was an additional factor that contributed to the scenario's complexity. This was yet another factor that contributed to the situation becoming more difficult than it had been previously expected to be. During the course of the investigation, the investigators probed deeper into their connection, which ultimately led to the unwinding of a web of lies and deceit that had been stitched together. This led to the revelation of the extent of Rod's dishonesty. In the course of the investigation, the investigators continued their work, and this event occurred during that period. The authorities embarked on a journey that was full of unexpected turns and twists in order to discover the truth about the unfortunate circumstances that surrounded Shelley Dana's death during the course of their investigation. In order to accomplish their objective, they needed to arrive at a decision concerning the circumstances surrounding her dying. They embarked on this journey in the first place because they were relentless in their quest of justice, which was the driving force for their decision to embark on this journey. The shadows of deception began to disperse with each new piece of information that was brought to light, so clearing the way for justice to win over the darkness and emerge victorious during this time period. In a moment of truth, Deborah Holmes courageously stepped forward and shed light on facts that had been unknown concerning Shelley Dana's passing up until that point. Consequently, this resulted in a crucial moment of truth that took place as a consequence of the situation. According to her admissions, Rod Coughlin's depravity was brought to light, which in turn brought to light his nefarious schemes to control custody and inheritance. The depths of his evil were revealed by her admissions. According to the revelations that she made, the degree of his evil was disclosed. By employing Deborah's testimony, in addition to a substantial amount of evidence that implicated Shelley, the police were able to unravel the mystery of Shelley's tragic death and bring Shelley to justice. Because of this, they were able to put the puzzle together. The investigation was maintained because each fresh piece of evidence that served as a blistering indictment of Rod's malevolent intentions served as fuel for the ceaseless quest of justice, which in turn spurred the investigation to continue. This process was repeated until the investigation was completed. Law enforcement experts carried out a comprehensive study of recordings and emails with the highest level of accuracy in order to unravel the intricate web of lies that Rod Coughlin had woven by himself. For another way of putting it, each and every digital breadcrumb got us one step closer to the truth and shed light on the path that led to the action that was required. I want to express my gratitude because of each and every one of these things. At the conclusion of the day, Rod Coughlin was taken into custody by the authorities, demonstrating that they were successful in their efforts to catch the one who was responsible for Shelley's death. The authorities moved rapidly in order to accomplish this goal. Ultimately, the long arm of the law was successful in locating him and bringing him to punishment for his past actions. It was the culmination of years of diligent investigation and unwavering dedication to the pursuit of justice that led to his arrest, which served as the apex of those years. His arrest was the most significant achievement that occurred during those years. There was a presentation of Rod Coughlin's case in the hallowed halls of justice, and the evidence that was against him was set out for everyone to see. This was done in order to ensure that the presentation is beneficial to all individuals. The individuals who fought relentlessly for Shelley's legacy shown an unwavering dedication that was demonstrated by each and every piece of evidence, which included horrifying testimonials as well as digital traces that implicated Shelley. The legacy that Shelley left behind was able to be preserved as a result of this. It was clear from the very beginning that each and every piece of evidence that was presented was evidence of his or her determination, and this was the case throughout the entire process. A verdict that was unanimous in its nature was ultimately reached by the jury after they had deliberated for a considerable amount of time together. After conducting their research, they came to the realization that Rod Coughlin was the one who was accountable for Shelley Dana's passing away that they had been looking for. As a consequence of the administration of justice, which brought about a sense of closure in the courtroom, a chapter that had been tainted by sadness was brought to an end. This brought about a sense of closure. Because of this, a feeling of fulfillment was attained within the individual. After the dust had cleared on the case of Shelley Dana, thoughts about her life and the tragic death of her were heard reverberating throughout the corridors of time. These sentiments were heard resonating throughout the passage of time. One of these thoughts was that she had passed away. Other thoughts included some other things. The sound of these concepts rebounding throughout time filled the corridors of time with their presence. As a result of recalling the occurrence that took place with her, we were presented with a distressing reminder of the priceless nature of life, as well as the unending yearning for justice. It was far too soon for her to be taken from this world, and her passing occurred much too soon. She was an individual who was full of life. It was a sad sorrow that she passed away unexpectedly. Once the sentence of imprisonment that Rod Coughlin was sentenced to was handed down, the possibility of him committing additional offenses was removed from the list of possibilities. The legacy of Shelley Dana will continue to be regarded as a bright example of justice and resiliency. This is due to the fact that his incarceration acted as a forceful warning to anyone who would attempt to spread the seeds of chaos and sorrow. This is due to the fact that his incarceration served as a useful lesson for others. In light of this, it is certain that Shelley Dana's legacy will be carried on for generations to come. Thank you for watching. I recommend our other crime videos.